sorry, I didn't catch your name. Is the mic for the gentleman next to Mr. Sanders? Is your
My name's Mike.
transmitter on? Your name's Mike?
Yeah.
Mike, is your transmitter on?
I'll check and see right now. It's on now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3, 4, 5.
Have an opportunity just to check relative levels?
Yeah, testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, if we could each do that.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis, siete.
That was nice. We got it cosmopolitan.
We got it covered.
Lord, yeah.
You're live.
Okay, welcome, and thank you all very much for joining us. Tomorrow, we are going to be celebrating the life and work of one of the great Americans in the modern history of our country, and that is Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. And I am so proud that we have with us today three knowledgeable people who have lived Dr. King's dream, who have struggled for his struggle, and know a lot about his life. And what we're going to do is just simply have an informal discussion about what Dr. King's work and life means for us today in the year 2016. So I'm really delighted to have with us Dr. Cornel West, who in fact has just recently published the book on the life of Dr. King. Killer Mike, who is reaching out to young people all across this country in an extraordinary way. And Senator Nina Turner, whose life has embraced much of what Dr. King has fought for. So we're just delighted to have all of you here. Dr. West, do you want to begin the discussion?
Yeah, one, of course, anytime we talk about Martin Luther King Jr., we recognize the degree to which he makes us shake and tremble. But the important thing is he's not an isolated icon. He's not just a figure in a museum. He's part of a very rich tradition, a tradition of a people who've been terrorized, traumatized, and stigmatized for 400 years, but still keep dishing out unbelievable courage and vision, and most importantly, love and justice. We're sitting at a church today, Mother Emanuel Church, and we're reading the words of Martin Luther King Jr. It just made you shake and quiver. And I said to myself, this is what the Sanders campaign is about.
Right. That's right.
Let's turn that out. This is what
That's
it's
right.
about.
That's right.
It's about the poor, working people.
Yeah.
It's about keeping track of the weak and the vulnerable. It's about
Yeah.
mustering the courage to tell the truth about Wall Street, about wealth inequality, about decrepit schools, the need for jobs with a living wage. And I think Brother Martin Luther King Jr., he was local in his activism, he was global in his vision, but most importantly, he loved us enough to die for us.
Amen.
Okay. Mike, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I know people on the other side of the camera like, why in the hell is a rapper sitting there with a U.S. Senator, one of the most notable scholars of our time, with two U.S. Senators? I am Michael Render, is what my mom named me. Killer Mike is what my dumb friends call me in a rap battle once, and it stuck. I have been mentored directly by Andrew Young, Joseph Lowry, Ralph David Abernathy III, and others that were directly involved with Dr. King. I've been organizing actively in Atlanta since I was 15 years old. My grandmother was an organizer and a marcher with Dr. King. She grew up in Tuskegee, Alabama. We have been sold a load of crock.
Yeah.
We have been given a pretty little compartment to put Dr. King in that says, no matter how much you hurt, no matter how much we stigmatize you, no matter how much we traumatize you, we beat you, you're as radical as you can go as nonviolence, and that's about where it is. Yeah. It never talks about the social justice aspect of Dr. King. Right. Alice Johnson was a white woman and my mentor from Chicago. She was the first person to introduce me to the radically different ideas of King that directly challenged establishment. They challenged the military-industrial complex. They challenged this country to feed and take care of its poor and its mentally ill in a different way. Challenged us to step and stand on the side of unions and between disputes between bosses or companies and workers. And I had never heard that. I just had heard in school, be nonviolent, it was all about desegregation. It absolutely was not only about desegregation. If he would have done that and that only, he would have been alive today. He was killed for many of the same reasons this man is campaigning for.
That's right.
He was killed because he spoke against the military-industrial complex. He was killed because he believed in the fairness and equity of all men. He was killed because he had the courage to say it, and he had the courage to demand it out of corporations. And it's for that reason, when I saw you tweet, you were going to shoot for the restoration of the Voters' Right Act, I knew I had met the real deal. And everything you've shown me since then has been in that line, and that's why you have a guy named Killer Mike sitting next to you talking about the most nonviolent warrior my race has ever created.
Mike, thank you very much. Senator Turner.
Amen to that. I just want to amen everything that has been said by Dr. West, Killer Mike, and Senator Sanders, you know, too, sitting in Mother Emanuel. I mean, even the pastor's sermon was preaching your gospel. You know, Dr. King, one of the last things he did in his life was the poor people's movement.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And people don't want to talk about that. He went to Memphis with the striking garbage workers, you know, for the least of these. And Micah 6 and 8 comes to mind, Dr. West. What does the Lord require of you? And we have so many people who talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk.
Absolutely.
And when they are in halls of power, they get afraid to speak up for the poor and the disenfranchised. One of the things the pastor talked about this morning, he said, we hear a whole bunch of people talking about the middle class, but ain't nobody talking about the poor.
Absolutely.
Dr. West and I, we nudged each other. I said, we know one who's talking about the poor.
That's right.
And it's in an unashamed way. And so when we talk about how Senator Sanders has encapsulated, he's one of many other voices that are out there, but he is using his political cachet, however. You know, titles are good, but purpose is better.
Absolutely.
And Senator Sanders is living his purpose, and he's using that title to shine a light in the same way that Dr. King used his title, his ascendancy was not just for himself, but it was for the people who did not have a voice. And so when we think about Dr. King and his movement, he had nonviolent resistance, but the key word is resistance. And he resisted for the good of the people.
But let me concur with what's been said. And let me tell you what kind of blew me away when you think about Dr. King's life. Obviously, it took an enormous amount of courage to stand up to the segregationists and the racists, to get jailed, to get beaten up. Incredible amount of courage. But what impressed me even more, I think Mike made this point, he could have rested on his laurels, right? The establishment would have said of you are a great black leader. Look what you did. You got the Voting Rights Act.
Yeah.
Wow. You broke down segregation in the South.
Yeah.
Incredible. But you know what? This is what courage is about. He said, ain't enough. If he's going to be consistent with his own inner soul, he has to ask other questions. And the questions he asks, he says, I'm a man of nonviolence. But we're living in a time of the Vietnam War. And people said, don't talk about that.
Right.
Don't talk about that. You're going to get in trouble. He talked about it, and you know what happened? A lot of the funding
Yes.
for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference disappeared. And then he said, and he made this point all the time, he said, of course we want to break down segregation. You have the right to go to any school you want to go to.
Yeah.
But then he asked, what does that matter if you don't have the money to go to that school? And that takes him then to the whole issue of income and wealth inequality. He says, how can it be in a country of so much wealth that so many people have so little? And as Senator Turner said, and people forget this, what was he doing in the last months of his life? He was organizing the Poor People's March of African Americans, of poor whites, of Latinos, of Native Americans. He was marching on Washington to say, you cannot forget about us. So what is courageous about him, he never stopped.
Right.
He understood the interconnectedness of everything, and he kept going forward.
Absolutely.
And as Senator Turner said, let's never forget where he was when he was assassinated. He was standing up in a union effort
Yes.
with the union, trying to defend workers who were exploited, low-paid, terrible working conditions. That's where he was killed. And I think that's a message that the corporate media doesn't want us to hear too much about.
No.
That's exactly right. But I think part of our challenge is how do we resist the deodorizing of our dear brother Martin, the Santa Clausification of Martin Luther King Jr., so that he appears harmless. He appears as if he's not a threat. See, when the FBI said he was the most dangerous man in America.
Yes.
Say, Edgar Hoover,
Yeah.
why would you say that? Well, he said that because he was willing to tell the truth about America and then reach out and organize white, black, red, yellow, working people, poor people that constitutes a threat to Wall Street
And made 'em dangerous.
and big corporations, big banks and big corporations. Anytime
Yeah.
you have a voice that can bring the masses together in that way,
Right.
you constitute a major, major threat. And I think what is magnificent about the Sanders campaign is now within the context of electoral politics. We haven't had this since '84 and '88 with Jesse Jackson in any massive way. And yet here we actually did have Brother Bernie Sanders, who's coming from the vanilla side of the country,
Yeah.
who's sensitive to the chocolate folk in the country,
Say that.
and then still willing to confront Wall Street after having spent time in Congress
Yeah.
as representative and senator, and of course mayor as well. So it's a very unique moment, and there's a real sense in which it could very well be America's last chance for the legacy of King
That's right.
to be addressed in a serious way. And it's a fascinating thing to be a brother from Brooklyn
Right.
who's leading it.
I was reading and watching some speeches by Fred Hampton, and there were two brothers that came in that were part of another political organization. And they said, they laid out a plan in front of Fred, said, well, here, Fred, here you go. This is what we're going to do. And he read through the papers, and Fred said, well, where's the education? And they were like, well, what are you talking about? We're going to put that in there. He said, no. You don't put that in there. You have to educate the people on the same things that we're educated on first. And if you're not educating the people, all you're doing is replacing despots. And he literally started naming black despots. Even Papa Doc, he says, white people, man, they hate, and this is how he talks. White people hate it, they hate it, man. Papa Doc hate them so bad, he hate this white piece of paper, wouldn't even draw it. But what did he do? He took power, he started pressing people the same way, because people weren't educated. I have been educated in the proper thoughts and philosophies of Dr. King, so I know truth, and I know truth when I see it. No other politician is on the other side of that camera telling you that you deserve health care as a right. No one is telling you that you deserve economic opportunity out of this country for a right. No one is telling you to require more of the republic that is the greatest republic on the face of the earth, except this candidate. So I'm saying, I don't care what color he is. I don't care what part of the country he is, who he's from. I know that they killed a man named Martin King, but they did not kill a philosophy.
That's right.
I am about principles and philosophies, and whoever lines up with those, that's who I'm in line with. You could be blue.
Yeah.
You could be red. You could be brown. You could be any shade of black, because we got them so black we blue. But it matters to me more that you stand in solidarity with this philosophy because you're white, because the most dangerous part of what Dr. King really said in the end was he fears that the white radical in the South is not the problem, but the white moderate who is about order over justice, about the social order of the day. Black boys are 17% unemployment. Don't worry about that. Let's worry about getting regular unemployment, okay?
Right.
But then you start yelling about crime festering.
Right.
Wherever you underemploy, 17% anybody is going to do crime.
Except your problem is it's higher than 17%. That's the problem. Actually, believe me,
Yeah.
Those are just the guys
All
reporting.
right, I want to raise one other issue
Yeah.
where Dr. King was extraordinary. Is, and Mike just touched on it, his understanding that change does not take place from on top, but from down below. The people have to be educated, and people have to be organized.
Absolutely.
Jump in. I mean, it's all of the struggles from Birmingham on.
Yeah.
Understood that you needed to have a well-educated, politically conscious group of people who are prepared to stand up and fight for justice.
Well, if I can put it in a frame where people can visualize it, when you think about your own house or you think about this building that we're in, the roof is nothing without the foundation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that really is what the grassroots represents. They represent the foundation. And so all great change in this country, to your point, Senator, has come from the grassroots. When I think about the spirit, though, of Dr. King, I think about people like Mother Teresa. She embodies the spirit of Dr. King. Or Mother Jones, who in 1800 was stumping for miners and said that I will fight like hell for the living, but I'm going to pray for the dead, but I'm going to fight like hell for the living. That is the spirit of Dr. King. Even when we talk about sanitizing people, I think about Rosa Parks. Sanitize her to make her seem like this elderly. She was only in her 40s, 40s to new 30, thank God Almighty. But, to sanitize her. But she was a revolutionary, too. She didn't just sit on that seat and say, I'm not moving today. She was organizing in the South when black women were being raped by white men during the Jim Crow era. She was there. E.D. Nixon sent her into the South. She took the report. They organized. She admired Malcolm X, a name that we are not allowed to say his name. Now, we can talk about Dr. King all day long, but don't you say Malcolm X, because now you done went too far. Both of those men and women whose names we know and don't know had a revolutionary spirit that says in the African proverb, I am because we are.
Absolutely.
And that really is what, you know, Senator, that's really what your campaign is. You are calling on a political revolution. You are reminding Big Mama down the street or Mr. Jones up the street that they have voice, and no matter how the corporate structure, corporate elected officials, because we got to call them out. Malcolm X said it's the difference between the fox and the wolf. And that is what we deal with even in our own, even in the Democratic Party. But you are reminding people that they have voice, and all of our voices together can make a difference.
One of my great worries is that so many people of all colors are giving up on the political process. They think it doesn't matter. Why should I go out and vote? You know, I'm unemployed, or I'm making $10 an hour, I can't afford child care, working longer hours for low. Who's going to listen to me? Anybody in Washington going to listen to me? And they understand that the system is rigged and it's corrupt, and they don't vote. And when they don't vote and get involved, a bad situation becomes even worse. So one of the things, I mean, what Dr. King was about is bringing people together. I remember, you know, I date myself by reminding people that I was there in 1963 for that march. And we came in from the University of Chicago. And my God, I mean, there's so many people, all colors. I mean, it was just an extraordinarily moving moment for me in my life. But what King was about and what the establishment feared, imagine what happens, blacks, and whites, and Latinos, and Native Americans, and working people come together and come up with a radical idea that maybe we should have an economy that works for your kids and all of our kids rather than just a handful of people on Wall Street.
Absolutely.
But Senator, talk about your organizing, though. This is not just about
you
weren't
were a
just
member
at
of
that
SNCC.
march.
Yeah.
But come on, talk about
Not a
that.
SNCC, I was a member of CORE.
A member of CORE, okay.
Here's what we did. This was in the early 60s, and we focused on two things. Number one, you know, those of us at the University of Chicago were able to raise some money, not a huge amount of money, to help young people at SNCC, people like John Lewis and the others. All right, so we sent some money down there. They were getting their heads beaten off, and we tried to help them to the degree that we could. But what some of us also said, yeah, we got to help our brothers and sisters in the South, but you know what? We got some struggles right here in the North as well. And what was going on at that particular time at the University of Chicago, where I attended, turned out that the university was a major landowner and owned a lot of apartments which were segregated. So what we did is we sent a black couple in, you know, to say, looking for an apartment. They said, we're looking for, and the landowner said, well, we're really sorry, there's just no apartments available right now. Fine. 2 hours later, we sent the white couple in. And the landlord said, okay, let me show you. We have apartment over here, an apartment over here, an apartment over here. This was apartments owned by the University of Chicago.
Not Donald Sterling.
The University of Chicago. Okay, and that resulted in one of the first sit-in demonstrations in the North, as I recall. We sat in at the administration building. It got a lot of attention, and it focused, you know, it focused on how a prestigious liberal institution like the University of Chicago was maintaining segregation. The other thing we got involved in was the segregated schools in the city of Chicago. And I remember, you know, I bumped into the Chicago Police Department before 1968, so I had a sense with these guys. As I was tossed into a paddy wagon, head first, I got a clue.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm friends with a lot of brothers and sisters in the nationalist community. There's still a very strong black nationalist community in this country, and they deserve to be recognized because they're working without cameras, they're working with no major media outlets. Your campaign, to me, speaks directly to some of the things that they're fighting, in particular, an unjust justice system that perpetually locks black men up at a 4 or 5 times rate.
You got it.
The inability to find jobs. You're white, and And we have been taught for the last 51 years, since they saw the potential of people to come together, to compartmentalize. If I'm black, that's your thing. Today I put up a picture of Leonard Peltier. If you're Native American, that's your thing. If you're a white woman, that's your thing. And everybody do their thing, and nobody ever get together. I just like for brothers and sisters to know out there that no war is won without allies.
Come on.
America wouldn't be here if France wouldn't have gave some help.
Yeah.
That's
You know,
right. That's
we
right.
we would have certainly fell victim. It's impossible to totally get what we deserve and what we want if we do not make smart political alliances.
That's right.
And I think that there's a large segment of our community that's going with the Democratic flow, that's making the Democratic alliances with people that just want things to stay in order.
That's right.
I like you because you're willing to shake things up. I like you because I saw you sit in a room full of grassroots organized in Chicago and not break a sweat and answer hard and
yes.
difficult questions.
That's right.
You know, hard. I mean, those kids didn't let up on you.
That's
They
true.
asked you about everything from your thoughts about Israel to your thoughts about incarceration. One girl said, "I don't believe there should be any police."
Right.
And I was
Yeah.
like,
Reparations?
"Whoa, I don't know if
Right now,
reparations."
can you let us know what date?
And that was 2 days before Christmas.
Yeah, like I got
before Christmas, right there. Come
I
on.
was.
And
He was strong.
I was
Yeah.
impressed
He
by
was
your
strong.
will to stay
Absolutely.
honest, and this is what I walked away with. He never says I as much as he says we. He said that to every person in the room. I can't do this,
That's right.
but we can. So
Mike, thanks
Absolutely.
for making that point. That is the
Absolutely.
most important point. Look, what I've said over and over again, you know this, you're in politics. You know, Dr. West, you know this. Given the structure of American society today, if I were elected president tomorrow, do you think that one person can take on Wall Street, corporate America, the big campaign donors, the corporate media which chooses to put what it will put on television? You got any one person? You can't do it. And what Dr. King is about is the understanding that bringing people together at the grassroots movement, to give the establishment an offer they cannot refuse, so to speak.
That's right.
That's the only way that we bring about change.
Absolutely.
All right, let's jump to an issue that Mike raised. Dr. West, Senator Turner, jump in, criminal justice. My impression is we have a system that is broken.
this will do Jim Crow.
We need major, major reform. Dr. West?
Well, I mean, one is we have to have leadership that has the kind of integrity, the willingness to fight and go against the grain, to tell the truth about the new Jim Crow Jr. as opposed to Jim Crow
Amen.
Sr.
Right. That's it.
And what does that mean? That means, yes, wholesale police accountability. So when they engage in the violation of the rule of law, the police themselves must go to jail. But it goes far beyond that. And it goes far beyond this debate about gun control. I think
Yes.
Hillary Clinton wants to
Yes.
highlight that and almost fetishize it and ascribe magical powers to it, as opposed to getting at the real issue, which is wealth inequality, poverty, decrepit schools, inadequate housing, communities that are shattered, and families that are weak.
That's right.
There has to be alternatives. There's got to be jobs with a living wage so that people have choices as opposed to getting locked into the kind of very sad conditions that are permissible under the present status quo. But the issue for me, integrity, is crucial.
It is.
It's
And I mean, we have a system where you have a group of folks, both African American and Latinos primarily, but poor white folks suffer the same injustices.
Absolutely.
We don't talk about, and that's another thing I like saying, because we got to bring our rural brothers and sisters. Poverty is poverty.
That's right.
We only highlight
That's right.
urban, but in terms of the police, when you have a whole group of folks, don't nobody love America like black folks love America. And what I mean by that, but yet and still, even during the Civil War, we have fought in every war in this country. Even though we were treated worse than second-class citizens, we said we will go because we love this country. But yet in the 21st century, we are still seen as the other. There was a paper written by a gentleman by the name of Charles Carroll called The Negro the Beast. And you can read that today. And I swear to you, African-American men in particular, but women too, we can't leave out our sisters, are still seen that way. And so we have police officers. Not all. My son is a police officer. My husband was a police officer. So I speak from both sides. I
And your
understand.
dad was. Is
My
that right?
dad
Right, your dad.
and
So we
family
get
members
it,
currently
right?
are,
You
yeah.
wanted dad to come home safe. I wanted my husband to come home safe. God knows my heart skips beats every time my son goes out. People who are just randomly shooting at police officers in their cars and stuff. That is unacceptable by any stretch of the imagination. But at the same time, when I talk to my constituents in Cleveland, Ohio, they need the police more than anybody. Black folks respect the police, but they want that same respect in return. Transparency, accountability, and justice can go hand in hand, because we cannot have a civilized society without the police. As my son reminds me, he says, Mama, I don't wear a bulletproof vest for fashion statement. I need that vest. And we can have both. And I will tell you, in our travels in Ohio, and I got to give it to Governor Kasich, when you talk about building coalitions, a Republican governor, Senator, on the heels of the death of John Crawford III in a Walmart, was walking around in Beaver Creek, and Tamir Rice. We got together, 3 elected sisters got together with that governor and asked him to create an executive order. He did it. He wasn't thinking Republican, he wasn't thinking white man, he was thinking do the right thing. So in terms of building coalition together, we can do that. And the job of this task force is to create standards for police officers in the great state of Ohio. It is a model. Why am I telling this story? Because at some point, we got to lay down all those things that divide us and come with what brings us together.
Absolutely.
But I remember a young brother, I think we were at the University of Toledo. I will never forget what this young brother said. He came up to us and he said, you know, people talk about the no-snitch culture among the criminal element, but nobody talks about the no-snitch culture among the police.
And the blue wall.
What is the message? Is that we need good police officers to stand up and say, when we shooting unarmed black men, it ain't right. When we shooting unarmed Hispanic men, it ain't right. When we shooting at unarmed black women, it ain't right. Unarmed poor people, it ain't right. Pulling a sister out the car because she's smoking cigarette in her own car.
That's right.
It ain't right. And to me, that is how we will begin to bridge the divide. If good police officers would stand up and say, enough is enough is enough.
And it ain't just police when we
Yeah.
say criminal justice
Yes.
system.
Yes.
It is a system.
Yes.
That's
The
right.
system, the police answer to their captains, their lieutenants. They are given instructions from their supervisors. This comes directly out of city halls, or the state goes directly up to city halls. This goes directly to your legislators, and it becomes a federal issue when legislators pass laws like the 1994 crime bill that was sponsored by then President Clinton.
That's right.
I'll give you an example. Young man was locked up, and this is the system. This ain't just the cops. The cops didn't kill him. He actually made it to jail. Then he was railroaded into a 30-year sentence while in jail for a nonviolent drug offense. After being given 30 years, it was discovered he had cancer. He had cancer. He went to Duke University, got the best doctors in the world, got his arm removed. Because Obama had started to drop those federal sentencings with the new guidelines he set forth, that man made it home in 3 months, about 3 months ago, just in time to watch his 20-year-old daughter die of cancer because she could not afford the type of health care that she deserved. So now you see what a criminal justice system does and how it aids not only to help a dad just because he's been locked up and get his cancer cured, but because we've left a daughter in poverty, because we've left her and her mother out there without a strong foundation in the household, because the parents are right there together with her. They would have been together this whole time. Now we have a child dying because we weren't even courageous enough to do one pair help. These are systems
That's right.
that we are creating. The justice system is corrupt when you have 54% of 54% of Ferguson was African American, 54% of the judges aren't African American, 54% of the police force isn't African American, and prosecutors are building political careers off throwing poor people and black bodies. We had a judge somewhere in the Northeast that sent 28 children to a camp because he was getting money kicked back. It is a system that is corrupt. I'm not going to let you just kick cops and say, it's the police. We just angry about the police. Because I don't want to be policed by anybody but black people. At least I know the person coming up to me can kind of understand my story. So if I stay in an all-black city, give me all-black police. If I stay in a mixed city, give me mixed police. And what I'm starting to see is that the cops are starting to take the blunt of the brain for everything. But your legislators not going to escape.
That's right.
Your judges are not going to escape. And your damn prosecutors should be doing better than
And the thing about it is,
to build your political campaign.
just to bring in Sister Hillary Clinton here for a minute, when she accepted $133,000 for the 2 major corporations that are for the privatizing of prisons so that they make money when there's more bodies and they're on Wall Street, and she gets caught, when she says then she's concerned about stopping mass incarceration,
That's a lot.
but she accepts this money, You see, this is a Jane Austen test. You know, this is not constancy. This is not moral consistency in this regard. And this is very important in terms of the difference between Brother Bernie Sanders and Sister Hillary Clinton. And
All right,
this
let
is
me
very
ask you
important.
this. Let me ask you this. Mike raised this one. We have, and it's not discussed at all, you know, as I often point out, one of the kind of fun things about running for president is you can try to force discussion on issues that media prefers to sweep under the rug. A few months ago, I asked some economists, do a study for me on youth unemployment, right?
Yes, sir.
This is what they found. This is for people who have no jobs or are underemployed. If a kid 17 to 20, a high school graduate, not a dropout, okay? Kid is white, 33% of those kids are unemployed or underemployed. Latino, 36%, African American, 51%. Okay. Now, what impact does that have on the fact that we have so many people in jail? Your point, yes? If people are not in school, if people are not working, if people are not feeling good about themselves, that's number one. What does it do to a human being? You graduate school, what do you want as a kid? You want to stand up on your own 2 feet, get out of the home, become independent, earn a few bucks, start a career. Half of African American young people cannot do that. What does that do to an entire generation?
Absolutely. That's a crime.
They wallow in
against
hopelessness.
humanity.
They're more susceptible to crime or
That's
get rich
right.
quick schemes. They're like a lot of times what we see is, oh, crime is pervasive. Crime is not pervasive. What you have is I'm sitting here, I'm jobless, no hopes of a job. Someone says run this credit card, give it a try. You do it one time, you have a federal charge. You are unemployable for the rest of your life because of a stupid mistake you made when you were 19 years old. That's what happens when jobs leave the country.
That's right.
When jobs leave the country, people are left without jobs. Places like Detroit, places like Southside Chicago, places like Westside Atlanta, where I'm from, are the bread and butter of the black community because the worker class, we didn't really have a middle class. Our middle class is $60,000 a year. Average white middle class, $150,000 a year. So our worker class got wiped out. When Reagan sent steel out of the country in the 80s, I saw my father lose a job. I have a non-biological and a biological father. I saw my non-biological father lose a job. When we aren't encouraging black boys who aren't going to go to college to go to trade school, to become aircraft mechanics, to become mechanics, when we aren't funding that with lottery funds the same way we fund for state schools, we are robbing them of an opportunity. So if you want to see crime de-escalate, increase jobs.
That's it.
Senator Turner, all right, you've been
Absolutely.
obviously active in Cleveland and Ohio for many years. You work with young people.
Yeah.
What do you think about what Mike just said?
Powerful. I remember growing up, there were programs to make sure that
Big,
youth whose parents were struggling could work every summer.
That's right.
And that's the kind of stuff that you're talking about, Senator, and you co-sponsored with Congressman
John Conyers.
Conyers. Right. We got to start to invest. You know, I think Brother Frederick Douglass said it best, and I'm not quoting directly, but he said something like, it's better to invest in children than to try to rebuild broken men. And so we have to begin to do that. A 51% unemployment rate among high school graduate
That's right.
African Americans is unacceptable. It is a crisis in this country. If it was anybody else's babies, folks would be saying something about it, but it's African Americans. And then when you talk about African American adults who are unemployed or underemployed, yes, the unemployment rate is going down. And I give President Obama lots of credit because that Great Recession destroyed folks' livelihoods. You talk about wealth killer, Mike. Most middle-class folks' wealth is in their homes.
Absolutely.
But you lose your home, you lose your investment. That is where your wealth is. We have not rebounded from that. And I think for me, when I hear Senator Sanders talk about these kinds of things, I hear him saying, I'm going to build on what President Obama started and take it further. You know, I was a track star in my...
By you. Me too.
Yeah, I can still run a little something, you know. Let these young jacks know sister still got it. But I was the first leg of the 440. But the 440 relay itself is about teamwork. Right. And so this is my point. The first leg got to give it to the second leg, who has to give it to the third leg, who gives it to the fourth leg. That is really what I see in Senator Sanders and some other. Go ahead, Doc. Go on, jump on in.
But when Brother Bernie stood up against Wall Street,
yes,
and too many members in the Democratic Party bail Wall Street out rather
Yes.
than Main Street.
That's it.
240,000
That's it.
black homeowners went under.
Yeah.
That was a matter of integrity. It was
Yes.
a matter of taking a stand. And I think black America in particular, America in general,
Yeah.
needs to give Bernie Sanders a chance in terms of finding out who he really is. Hillary Clinton has a big name. She got big money.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders has a big heart, but he's got a
Come on.
vision for poor and working people. And don't be afraid of socialism.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid
Yeah.
of the word. They try to use it against the brother.
But Shakespeare
Martin
said,
Luther
what's in the
King-
name?
What
A
did they-
rose by any other name. Come on, Doc. Smells justice.
And the content. Martin Luther King
Come on.
Jr. was a democratic socialist.
Yes, he
Albert
was.
Einstein,
Yes.
Helen Keller, John
Yeah.
Dewey,
Break
early
it down.
Reinhold Niebuhr. We can
Break
go
it down.
on and on and on. It's a matter of whether you have the integrity and willing to bear
Let
witness
me
and tell the
mention
truth.
something.
Yeah.
I want your comment on this. Tell me what I'm missing here. A few days ago, it was announced that Goldman Sachs, one of the large financial institutions in this country,
$5 billion.
agreed to a $5 billion,
billion.
that's a B, $5 billion settlement with the government for defrauding investors in the subprime mortgage fiasco. In other words, they were selling worthless products.
They
Okay?
didn't go to jail. So-
They didn't go to
Oh, you're taking my line away from me. All right. $5 billion. The CEO of Goldman Sachs is a billionaire. That particular CEO goes to the Congress and says, you know what, you got to cut Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and pensions and all that stuff. Meanwhile, they reach a $5 billion settlement for destroying the lives of God knows how many people throughout this country.
Absolutely.
Now, some kid gets caught with marijuana, you got a police record. $5 billion settlement, no charges at all. And for these guys, by the way, $5 billion
A drop in the
is kind of
bucket.
chump change.
It's a drop in the bucket.
All right.
Absolutely.
That's why people are giving up on the political process, why they understand that the criminal justice system is broken, why they understand that the campaign finance system is corrupt,
That's right.
the economic system is rigged. That is the reality.
It is.
And what we have to do and what all of us are talking about is bring people together. Now, I want to ask you guys a question, all right? Here's the question. In your judgment, why is it that so many white working class people are voting against their own best interests?
Well, you've got a long history of the wages of whiteness. They invest in their white identity that obscures their perception of reality. That's part of the vicious legacy of white supremacy in America, to think that somehow, if they can scapegoat the most vulnerable, identify with the powerful symbolically, as the powerful is concretely still manipulating and dominating them. And that's precisely, again, why Martin was killed. Because Martin he was able to bring all the different peoples of different colors who were poor and working class together over against the powerful, not out of hate, not out of revenge, not out of envy, not out of resentment, out of love for poor and working people and the call for democratic accountability of the 1% at the top. That's the direct connection between the legacy of Martin King and the legacy of Brother Bernie Sanders and the campaign. Because see, we're going to keep pressure on our brother when he wins, and he is going to win.
That's right.
He's going to need pressure. They're going to come at him.
Right.
There must be movement outside the system, those with integrity inside the system, to serve the poor and working people here and around the world.
That's right.
See, what I have never forgotten, it's true then and it's true today, way back in the heyday of segregation, do you know who the lowest paid white workers in America were? People in Mississippi.
Oh,
Lowest
yes.
wages.
Yes.
What do they have going for them? They could drink out of a damn water fountain, but a black guy could not.
Right.
That's right.
That was what they were sold.
It's an illusion.
Right. Meanwhile, they're the lowest wages
Yeah.
They
of any
still
white worker in
catching
America.
hell
Right.
economically.
Right. It's an
I
illusion.
am a
That's right.
Southerner. I know what it looks like to be poor in places like Shorter, Alabama, in places like Chattanooga, Tennessee, the bottom of the Appalachian. And I understand how holding on to that whiteness could be the only thing you got. I really understand how that mistake can be made, how you can vote against your interests, because when you ain't got nothing,
That's right.
whatever somebody tells you got, you got. I'm just saying it's time to smarten up.
That's right.
It's time to understand that the people that got washed under in New Orleans were not just black.
That's right.
There were many poor white people that have not been able to return home. There were many poor white people that lost their lives in their homes. I would like to go and say, or just further the discussion, I don't know what's wrong with working and middle-class black people, that you're so married to whoever the National Democratic Party says this is it. even when you see the real thing in terms of, if you have Martin King on your wall or Malcolm or Huey or any one of those people that's in any of our homes, you have to see how this philosophy lines up with that. If you've read the autobiography of Malcolm X, you know, if you've read Native Son, if you've read any of these, you have to see how this philosophy and stuff. So I'm wondering why you aren't running off. I'm wondering why you aren't working in factories challenging your white working class brothers. Hey, man, check this out. Just like y'all talk about sports, just because you wear a Cowboys jersey don't mean you can go on the field. So those white brothers already know. They know I'm white is all I got, I'm going to use that. But for you black working class and middle class people, I challenge you to tonight, go on your Google, go on your YouTube, look up Martin's speeches post I Have a Dream. In fact, look at the whole I Have a Dream speech and look at the other stuff he said. And after that, compare it to what this young man is saying. And
young man,
vote for
all right,
you can vote for another Democrat after that.
That's right.
Then
That's true.
And the letter from the Birmingham jail, too.
That's true.
You know, and Kilmer, I was watching your, I don't know if it was your interview with the senator, but you talked about Jane Elliott and the blue-eyed, brown-eyed test.
Yes.
I want to bring to another one Professor Andrew Hacker. And in his political science classes, he used to ask his white students, he would say to them, you know what, we made a mistake. You really black. But he said, but since we made a mistake, government, we made a mistake, we're going to pay you for our error. How much is it worth? And to a person, those white students would give a value. Because psychologically, even if it was subliminal, they know that being black means catching hell. So the point is that we are really all in this together.
Absolutely.
And in the rural parts of Ohio, Senator, I can tell you when I was stumping and running for Secretary of State, my rural brothers and sisters in the southern part of Ohio want the same thing that my urban sisters and brothers want in the northern part of Ohio. They want to know that they have a good job. They want to know that they have a future for their children. They want to know that they live in a safe neighborhood. They want to know that they got universal health care so they're not wiped out for being sick. It is really the mosaic of humanity that your campaign speaks to.
There's one element, though, our dear brother Mike landing out so beautifully, and that is the black political class.
Absolutely.
You see, that what has happened is they're not willing to cut against the grain, so they end up misleading a lot of the black working people and others because they associate those who are telling the truth but cutting against the grain as something that's too risky. And so we end up with, and this is, I salute you as a member of the black political class, because the black political class has failed black people in terms of telling the truth about our poor and our working class. You got nice little nepotistic, cronyistic activities going on among professionals that allow them access to their careers and upward mobility when Jamal and Letitia out here getting done in. And so here we get a candidate concerned about Jamal and Letitia, and where's the black political class?
Well, Senator Turner, you may, if you feel comfortable, you can talk about it or not. You were originally sympathetic to Secretary Clinton, right?
I was.
You came on board. Yeah. You got some feedback from some of the establishment.
Oh, I did. It was terrible. I mean, you know, I would like to think when a sister volunteers her time, right? And I volunteer my time to be helpful.
Yes.
Because I have nothing against the secretary. She is a public servant. She has served over a period of time. But I got a chance to hear this voice. But I volunteered my time in 2014. Next thing I know, I endorsed Senator Sanders, and all of a sudden I'm a sellout, I'm a traitor, I ain't gonna never be nothing. I can't tell you how many liberal white women in particular. I remember a lady came up to me, she said, after all we've done for you. Now you know that's cold for, right?
You heard
after you know, I got emails. I want to. I'm glad you. I just want to go for the record. I volunteered my time in 2014 after me running for Secretary of State. I got approached by some Ready for Hillary people, Senator Turner, we need your fire, to remind Democrats that even though we got our behinds handed to us all across the country, we are still somebody. I'm paraphrasing. And I said, sure. But now I get vilified. Wow. The media wants to paint it as a switch. Well, it wasn't a switch. I like to think of it. I was working for somebody. I was volunteering as I was making up my mind. And then my husband said to me, he said, baby, have you heard Senator Sanders? I said, I know about Senator Sanders. He said, no, have you really listened to Senator Sanders? He said, I think if you listen to him, you're going to have something on your mind.
I wouldn't trust you if that hadn't happened.
That's exactly
what happened. When we started this discussion, talking about courage, yes?
Yeah. Oh,
and
well,
Dr.
Senator,
King's courage. This is courage.
That's courage. That's
I
courage.
gotta
That's courage. That's courage.
I went home. I went home. I told my wife about you. I told my mama about you. I called my daughters, 18 and 8. I called them. I said, you got to watch her. Mikey, the 8-year-old, actually did it. The 18-year-old thinks I'm crazy. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. Been mentored directly by the people who sat this close to Dr. King.
Yeah.
When those young punks got out of Morehouse and the other schools and they told their fathers in the political class in Atlanta that we are going to protest, boycott, and get fairness for black people, they told them, here's your bag. There's Alabama. Have fun. Now, and I say that to say this. What you guys are doing is normal. What you did to her is normal. It's been happening for 50, 60, 100 years in this country to the black political class. You step out of line with the deal that's already been cut, it gets beat up. You get beat up. So the better deal never happens. I want to talk to the black constituency right now. The people that they talk about, that they kick around, that they say don't have a shot, that's what they said about King early. That's what they said about him when he came out. That's what they said about him when he was a young preacher. That's what they said about him in Birmingham. That's what they said about him in Mobile. That's what they said about him in Chicago. So anybody who they're kicking, who they're saying the policy will never work, who's going to pay for it, I'm more entrusted to because I know personally, not through opinion, that's exactly what Andrew Young faced.
Yes.
That's exactly what John Lewis faced. That's exactly what Martin King, that's exactly what Abernathy faced. That's exactly what my personal mentor, Reverend James Orange, faced. So if you want to be in line with the philosophy of King, if you wish to be in line with the philosophy of freedom, justice, and equality for everyone, you have to be in an uncomfortable place. You have to be prepared to have friends call you and tell you crazy. Again, my friends from the nationalist community, I've been called sellout, white superiority endorser, all that cool stuff. I was like, well, I hope they cook collard greens in the white community. But
I told that I would never have a future again.
I rap,
you know,
luckily.
you can I might have to join. But you know what? It wasn't, to me, when you know what is right, you got to do it.
You got to do it. You compare.
And God got my back. He's had it up until this point, and he's going to have it after this. And I hope that with my doing this, it's not about me, Senator Sanders. This is really about doing the right thing.
Absolutely.
You are a man of the people. And my heart, when I spoke to you, my heart leaped. It wasn't a big... I know who I need to endorse, and I'm proud.
And we should
I'm
note
proud of
that
you,
the
Senator.
great Haki Makabute, one of the great artists, poets, educators, institution builders coming out of the black arts movement, coming out of the black nationalist community. I'm going to see him in 2 weeks. He says he's for Brother Bernie Sanders.
That's all right.
Now, you see, that's just truth-telling.
Yeah.
And he does that out of his unconditional love for black people.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And he loves others, but he starts on the chocolate side of town.
Yeah.
And when you get Haki Mahabute
Ooh.
talking about they are for,
That's powerful.
he is for Brother Bernie Sanders, then black Americans got to get out of the sleepwalking and wake up
Wake up.
and join this campaign.
That's it.
And you're lucid enough to do whatever. Like black Americans, you've been Republican once.
That's it.
You have so-called
That's right.
freedom today because at one point in time you control the thoughts and the logic of the political party called the Republicans through people like Frederick Douglass and others.
Absolutely.
Even up through the Civil Rights Movement. Dixiecrats turned to Democrats. Democrats, you assumed control of this party in terms of your particular issues. You've driven this party in a noble direction. If this party is not willing to stand with the thoughts and philosophies that mirror King, then you got to tell them we're going to run independent with like the dude was before he ran as a Democrat. But you can't just be the girlfriend on the side waiting at home anymore. While you got a cheating husband in the streets or a cheating man in the streets. You can't do that anymore. It is time that you put a set of demands on your relationship. If we're going to continue this beautiful relationship with the Democratic Party, then the thoughts and philosophies have to be in line with the greatest Democrats that's still on our grandma.
Well, we don't want to be the mistress no more, Killer Mike. We want to be the wife.
All right, on that note.
Well, you telling the truth. You telling the truth.
I can't preach, though. That's you.
No,
that's the politics.
brother, you
I
telling the
Dr.
truth.
West,
You telling the
Dr.
truth.
West, thank you for
I
all
love
you're
it.
doing and have been doing for years. As one of the great intellectuals in the United States of America.
Absolutely.
Mike, thank you so much for your approach and reaching out to kids, black and white.
Thank you.
and
Yes.
Latino.
Thank you.
And Senator Turner, thank you for your lifetime service. So it's been an honor for me,
Thank you, Senator.
and it's been very moving for me to be here with you guys. So thank you all very much.
Thank
you
you.
for watching.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Oh,
That was
that was
great,
rich.
Can I
Ooh,
steal a
that was
picture from
rich.
someone? Can I steal a picture?
Ooh, that
Come on, I
was
need you to steal a
rich.
picture.
Yeah, let's do a pic. Absolutely.
Good,
Simone, you
gotta
got it?
get this here so we don't step on it. Yeah, there you go. Lord, Lord.
We're done with the mics, correct? Oh, hold on, let me give you this.
Yeah, let me give you
Hold on,
my
I
mic.
always play
Yeah,
this
that-
mic on.